because every time there's a false alarm and then everybody relaxes, then the creature attacks.
Big
the movie
surprise.
is well made with convincing performances by Catherine Hicks and little Alex Vincent. And I guess I should also mention they did a good job on the doll. In the early scenes, it looks so wholesome, you know it has something wrong with it. And in the later scenes, it transforms itself into a truly frightening personality. It was an effective horror film.
It wasn't an effect. It was not for me. No, I mean, I laughed at the doll, and I also don't like to have scenes with children in terrorized situations. You remember, you said at the top of the show about how you're sick and tired of seeing priests being used as villains in a way, or their sacraments being tossed around. I hate to see kids in perilous situations. I think it's one of the easiest, cheapest thrills that you can do.
Yeah, but this is a plucky little kid,
yeah.
and he stands up for himself, and he is not just simply running around screaming.
He's not entirely.
He's given something to do, and he's a pretty good actor.
I think that the business, if you want a picture about where a doll comes alive and is really threatening, I think a good film was, a better film was with Anthony Hopkins and Margaret called Magic a few years ago. This film is not at that league. I just thought it was silly, and I didn't buy it at all.
Now, that kid there was Stephen Jeffries. He's the guy that Roger and I are always saying looked exactly like a young Jack Nicholson.
If Nicholson's ever looking for somebody to play his son, that's the guy who gets the job.
You bet. Now, those long nails we saw at the end of the picture actually, I thought, proved to be the undoing of Fright Night, because the often witty and funny movie in the beginning sadly turns at the end into a ghoulish special effects show full of disintegrating bodies, rotting corpses, and the sickest of all, a dying dog that crawls around with a stake through its heart. A lot of special effects in this film that are all too familiar or just plain gross. So, a reluctant thumbs down from me on Fright Night, because it is simply too gross at the end after a very funny beginning.
Well, it's a close call for me, but I do give it a thumbs up because I did think it was funny. And also, you're objecting to rotting corpses and disintegrating bodies in a vampire movie? What do you expect they're going to find in that coffin?
Not to the degree, Roger. In other words, we've seen other vampire films from
Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing,
where one thing disintegrates and it's a big moment, and we see it all turn into
You're ignoring the paradox of rising expectations in special effects films. This is 1985. You can't have Vincent Price putting one stake through one heart anymore. You got to have all that
I'd
stuff.
settle for two,
and
not
also,
200.
Also,
not
partially
200.
it's satirical. For example, when the
dog
vampire,
is satirical, was that satirical when the dog is running around? That wasn't satirical. That was gross.
So let it be gross. I mean, you're looking at a vampire movie and you're saying it's in bad taste. It's supposed to be in bad taste. That's the whole point.
No, there have been other vampire films that have been quite stylish. Nosferatu. Even The Howling I liked, which was on the border of gross. I'm just saying it's too gross.
Well, this movie has nothing at all to do with Nosferatu or The Howling.
It has a lot to do with The Howling.
The fact that Roddy McDowell is a tip-off, it's a Saturday afternoon.
That stuff is fun. I said it too.
Vampire movie that's having fun with itself, and at that level, I give it thumbs up.
I have seen lots of horror films, and I did it.
Yeah, come on, Siskel, come on. You don't like Child's Play or Fright Night, really? Especially Child's Play. I really like the original. Because, I mean, yeah, the kid isn't just there screaming, you know, just, oh, he's in terror the whole time. No, he's active, he's doing something. He's actually investigating what's going on with Chucky, and he's trying to convince the adults that it's happening. Yeah, well, and Fright Night, come on, man, you're just taking it too seriously, you know? Come on.
Enjoy it, because for once, the teenagers weren't making the same old stupid mistakes. Nope. They were making new stupid mistakes.
Yeah, well, I've seen a lot of horror films too, probably the same exact number as you, and I didn't get into the picture. I don't think it's really as much of a clever satire as you're suggesting, because I think that it starts out as a slasher film and then adds this other material, this knowing material, but you still have to sit there, even if you're hip to the satire, Roger, and watch girls being stalked, ripped apart, and it isn't fun. So the attitude that I brought, which is always neutral to a picture, was depressed at the 25-minute mark in this film, and I, smiled knowingly at what the film was saying, but I didn't learn anything.
Gene, I don't think it starts out as a slasher film. It starts out already as a satire. For example, the use of the big glass patio doors in the background for the telephone call.
Yeah. Well, while you're noticing the glass patio doors being shattered, I'm noticing
I'm noticing the fact that they're there.
Okay. And I'm noticing a body getting shattered. And I'm not going on the high horse against you. I'm just saying, no. I'm saying that that's what I noticed, and I found it offensive.
Okay, would you have enjoyed this more if the characters had not been savvy?
No, it would have been a worse picture, but I'm not recommending it.
I like Sigourney Weaver. I like her in this movie. I like her in almost...
What the? So he likes Scream 2, but not Scream 1. Okay. What? And I wouldn't go as far to say the original Scream's a satire. It's in there. But I don't know. I mean, I think there's some pretty... I mean, to me, it's like a horror movie with some comedic satire moments. But, come on. You like 2 but not 1? Really? Like, the 1's definitely better.
Everything she's done. But you may have noticed that you didn't see any of the actual aliens in those scenes that we showed you. I think the movie company is trying to keep the aliens a secret until you see the movie, or maybe they're afraid that the aliens are such a turnoff that if you do see them, you won't go to the movie. And that sort of leads into my kind of two-sided review of this film. This is one of those on the one hand and on the other hand movies. On the one hand, it's very well made. Sigourney Weaver does a terrific, very strong acting job. She holds the movie together with a powerful performance. The special effects are outstanding. The movie is scary and horrifying and disgusting from one end to the other, and I have nothing but admiration for its craftsmanship. But on the other hand, and this is a big but, at the end of the movie, you know what? I felt really bad. My stomach was all knotted up, and I was jumpy and unhappy and tense, and it took me a while to get back to normal again. Aliens was so strong it was overkill. It really did upset me. So as a movie critic, I'm giving the movie thumbs up. I think it's a good thriller. But if I were talking to a friend, I think I'd say, hey, I'm not sure you want to see this movie. You know, what kind of a mood are you in?
And I will use you and everyone listening to me as a good friend and say, hey, I think you want to see this movie.
Really?
Yes, for the following reasons. I think the key word in your review was overkill. This is pretty much wall to wall. The monsters are on the attack. And once we see the first monster, from that point out, you got about an hour or more of monsters on attack. Mm-hmm. And that was about probably a half an hour too much for me. And I have another objection. This is one of long-standing. I think one of the cheapest shots you can do in a movie is show a child in peril. Mm-hmm. You know, a kid in front of the street and will the car run them down. When I see a movie do that, I check out of that picture because I think they're taking the easy way out. And I know that the kid, unless it's one of these comedy splatter films or something, the kid is not going to get nailed, so it held no suspense for me. And this movie holds that little girl that we saw in the last scene in peril for quite a long time. She's probably in peril for 15 minutes of the movie, and I was saying, who needs the grief? I don't want to see the little girl grab.
I know your point about using the little kids. I'll defend it to this degree. In all the alien movies, there is always that question. Who is with us and who's against us? Because these aliens go inside of you and they incubate in here and then they pop out. And, of course, since that little girl was alone on that planet for a long time before this group arrived, there is the question, is she a real little girl?
I like the way this movie looked and felt, and I like the energy the actors put into their performances. There were times when they seemed to be playing for the audiences in every theater in the multiplex. I liked the production design, the costumes, the lavish and seductive photography. I liked all of that. What never really moved me very much were the characters. I didn't believe their emotions. They seemed to be playing for effect rather than for motivation. But still, it's a good-looking movie. I recommend it for what I liked about it, but not for the rest.
Yeah, and I'm voting thumbs down, Roger. It is a great-looking picture, but, boy, that's all I saw. I was interested early on in the Gary Oldman Dracula, the old Dracula. I thought that was an interesting creation. He looks like some kind of weird grandmother with a beehive hairdo, and I thought that's fresh rather than the cloaked prince that we're usually getting in the films. But beyond that opening sequence, I don't think that the Winona Ryder character was very charismatic at all. Keanu Reeves as the lawyer, I thought was kind of in another century. Well, he is another century, but I thought it was maybe the 20th century. And I thought it was very disorganized. And, yes, Coppola is a master of the visual, but I thought it was a pretty empty picture.
Well, the important thing with a movie of this length and complexity is to have a storyline that is clear enough.
Driven through.
So that people know at every moment exactly who is who and why, and whether we care about them and what's going to happen next. And here you have, as I said before, set pieces in which everything spins around in beautiful pictures, but there's no real emotion.
So then why do you give it thumbs up?
I love the way it looked.
Well, I like the way it looked.
There has to be, you know, thumbs up, thumbs down is such an arbitrary thing anyway.
Not arbitrary.
This movie does things with the visuals of vampirism and the Dracula legend you have not seen done before. I mean, the sets, the costumes, the atmosphere, the music, the special effects.
I know you were bored during it, and I was bored too. I really was.
Well,
Coming up next...
I'm glad you're a mind reader. Maybe you could get a job in the next picture doing your act or something.
Thank you.
I guess the idea is that the TV people...
Yeah, he's telling him he's bored, and he's like, I wasn't bored. But, yeah, I mean, Bram Stoker's Dracula, it is kind of a mess of a movie, especially, like, in the middle. But I really like it. Yeah, and the look, I know, I agree with Ebert. It's a great-looking movie. And great performances, and, yeah, Keanu Reeves is not very good, and... Yeah, I don't think Winona Ryder's that great either, but I still really like it. I mean, I just reviewed Nosferatu, and I think I like Bram Stoker's Dracula more. And I like Nosferatu, the new one. But...
Or the spirits in possession of this house have occupied that closet, and it's in the 4th dimension, so you can kind of go through it and come out through the living room ceiling. The whole last half of this movie is filled with effects like that, as evil spirits play games with the family's sanity. Well, why are these spirits so disturbed? Turns out the real bad guys in Poltergeist are the same villains Steven Spielberg used in his hit movie Jaws, the local real estate developers. This time, instead of telling people it's safe to go back in the water, they've been up to other dirty tricks I'm not even going to tell you what they did, but they shouldn't have. The whole movie is just that silly, and we never do find out if a real poltergeist was involved in the strange events in that haunted house, but Poltergeist is a good summer thriller with good special effects. It's not a great movie. I give it kind of a moderate recommendation.
Our first disagreement. I feel so bad about this picture that I think that I'm starting to like Rocky III a little bit more.
Really?
I felt that this film wasn't scary except for one door closing and the little childhood fears of being in the dark at night. And that's at the very beginning of the picture. Then all this mumbo-jumbo about spectral light, afterlife. I felt that I was not too far from that garbage movie we once made a Dog of the Week, Beyond and Back.
Beyond and Back.
I thought that this, Roger, you just tried to give an explanation, you know, with something in the closet. I never understood it. I haven't talked to a single person that could tell me what is going on in this.
I'll meet you after the show. All I have to say is I think the movie works as entertainment. It's not great. It's okay. I'll tell you one thing, though, that I would like to make, and this is probably an important point. This movie is about a little girl who finds out that the toys in her bedroom are going to try to strangle her, that people are in her bedroom closet and going to pull her out of bed and take her away from mommy and daddy. This is a PG-rated film. I think for young kids it's too strong. If I had seen this movie when I was 7, I would have been afraid to go to bed until I was 12.
I think it's probably too strong for young people, but I don't think that they should even bother with it. I think there's a better film, much better films around this summer. I think that this
Including the next film we're
I
going to
think
review.
this is, I really think that this is, and I think when you say it's good special effects, I'm going to accuse you of something, which is being intimidated by special effects. Anybody can do these special effects now, and this doesn't have a convincing story at all.
Just because anyone can do it doesn't mean they aren't done well. The whole point is the next movie. Why don't you get to the next one? It's got better special effects.
And
it's
a story and
okay,
characters.
On the other hand, it's a look behind the scenes of Hollywood. It's smart, it's scary, and it's curiously thought-provoking.
It didn't provoke a single thought in my head.
Come.
No, Roger, they put in these people who you and I know, and so it's kind of campy fun to see them in their real life roles on the screen. But at the core level, this is a mad slasher movie with Freddy, who I have never enjoyed as a villain, and I don't enjoy him here. It's just the same old bloodletting with new actors.
It's too bad that the movie didn't provoke a couple of more thoughts in your head.
Ahead.
For example, the use of that little child in some of the sequences, such as when he's up on top of that tower, is very scary and I think very effective. The whole way that the idea, it's kind of a dangerous idea that people who are actors in these movies might have their own lives affected by the nightmares that they are creating for others.
But it's
never been done before.
But Roger, no, what I'm saying is it's so obvious and it isn't really dealt with. What it's really, I don't feel that they're really in jeopardy. It's just an excuse to have the same old bloodletting. Coming up next,
do not agree.
Well, we don't. Good. I like that creature and some of the intentionally stupid dialogue at the beginning of this picture. But eventually, I'd say after about 30 minutes, this film really wore out its welcome with more creatures than human characters. This is a case, I think, of a film that is a lot of frosting and very little cake.
It ran out before the end. There was not enough inspiration to go for the whole time, but I really liked what did work, enough that I would recommend the movie. What the director here, Sam Raimi, is doing is satirizing all kinds of movie genres. The basic movies that he's satirizing in this movie are the Three Stooges movies. For example, the scene where the hand gets cut off and it keeps hitting the guy on his head and he has to put it down, and other scenes like that. Then there is a takeoff on Taxi Driver. The scene that we just saw, the ballet dance, where she lets her head roll down her arm and puts it back on again, that's Fred Astaire. And there are 7 or 8 other movie references in this film. It's not just a horror film.
Yeah.
It's very clever and very funny.
Yeah, but it did run out for me. I got tired. I wanted something more than a little, you know, those are like 7 little clips strung together, and I would like a film that had a continuing story because, again, this film just has nothing to really say except the technology. I thought it was more technology than story.
Well, it was trying to be a bunch of comic one-liners, and it lasted for the first hour.
Okay.
It lasted for the first hour. And also, you wanted a movie you thought would be more interesting. If you could have seen what she had for lunch in this movie, you get to see what he has for lunch.
In addition to Dracula, he also masquerades as...
Siskel doesn't like Evil Dead 2? Oh, come on. The movie's a masterpiece. Are you kidding me? I know it. It's hilarious. Ebert gets it. I know. It's hilarious, too. Come on. I think he's just taking it a little too seriously, you know? It's like... like... Look what Sam Raimi's trying to do, and does he accomplish it or not, you know? And I think he does. Oh, I totally disagree. Siskel.
Is Hopalong Cassidy, Jimmy Cagney, and the Mummy. Fade to Black is fairly predictable. Once we see what movie character he's dressed up like, we can almost predict what he's going to do, but I sort of like this movie. It's not an all-time great thriller, but it does have a certain offbeat appeal to it, and Dennis Christopher is really weird and creepy as the killer. This is nothing like his performance in Breaking Away, which is probably why he wanted to do this movie.
I think you're right. He's very good in the best part of the film, except for that actress Linda Carriage as Marilyn Monroe. The film opens wonderfully, and I was rooting for it, but then I felt it degenerated. It got more and more violent with scenes like that, a lot of blood, a stick going through somebody's heart, that girl there. I thought that this film really fell apart at the end, and I was disappointed after such a nice beginning.
I liked it. I felt it had to end like that. It's a horror thriller. It's almost inevitable that this kid is mentally deranged. He's going to get more and more violent. That's the way the movie has to go.
Well, I just wish that it had been done with more of a spirit and love of movies throughout than just routine bloodshots.
Well, I think there are 2 attitudes toward how you feel about old movies. On the one hand, you can say, how come it didn't have more spirit, you know, of the love of old movies? On the other hand, I've met, and I'm sure you've met, people who really are obsessed with old movies to almost to an unhealthy degree. They get that strange light in their eyes while they corner you at parties and drill you with details about insignificant events in the movies. And this is a kid who just got pushed over the edge. He just lost his grip on reality. I like the fact that the movie went all the way with it.
Okay, and I didn't. Female abuse are...
I don't think I've ever heard of that. Fade to Black? Maybe we'll try and check that out. Because I don't know, Siskel didn't like it. I may like it. Although I think people are too hard on Siskel. They're like, oh, he didn't like aliens, and yeah, I mean, but, you know, he did like Critters, though.
Too much with us, I think, now to be trifled with any more in the movies. We had this complaint about the picture involving Julia Roberts. I have it again here. I didn't learn a thing about serial killers from this movie. A much more honest, less exploitive film on the same subject was last year's Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. By contrast, The Silence of the Lambs is a star-studded freak show directed by the usually enormously talented Jonathan Demme, who I think for the first time in his career has picked a surprisingly trashy project.
Well, this is a tough film to review because, of course, in terms of its subject matter, one can easily target it as you have. And also, I think that the ending doesn't really work. Once she gets into the house of Buffalo Bill, it does become a standard who's behind this door, who's going to jump on me from the shadows. The first part of this film, though, Gene, is terrifically effective, partially because of the real tension, the dynamic interaction between Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins. It's one of the most peculiar and fascinating relationships I've seen in a movie in a long time. Hopkins is very good here. Foster is very good here. The dialogue is at a very high level of intelligence, and the movie works not perhaps in the same way as Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, but effectively. And I think that you're really shortchanging a lot of skill and craft and art that went into this film.
No, you know, sometimes you say, I think you blew it on this one. I think you're being too easy on this picture in this way. he is presented, the Anthony Hopkins character is presented as this big evil thing, and we're going down there to see them, a journey into hell and all that. And frankly, he was so pumped up, and the music was so pumped up at such a high level that I
worked for me. It worked.
Well, then you're easy, because for me, I thought, oh, come on. A guy who's truly frightening doesn't need, a huge organ playing in the background. I didn't buy it at all.
This is the movies. What did you want? A documentary, black and white, television, shoot it on video?
The reason why Henry, the Portrait of a Serial Killer works is because these people, my intuition, I don't have any first-hand knowledge, these people tend to be kind of dull.
Well, they're two different kinds of movies, and you're using one to criticize the other.
Yes, we always do that, Roger. We say better picture than the same
Why can't you criticize this on its own terms instead of saying what it is?
I'm criticizing on its own terms. I wasn't compelled by anybody except, I suppose, the Jodie Foster character as a strong woman.
Come on, a great performance.
Not a great performance, a decent performance.
Anthony Hopkins,
no,
great.
I thought that was way overplayed.
I love that moment when he puts the...
Wow, I was just being easy on Siskel, too. He doesn't like Silence of the Lambs? Are you kidding me? It's one of my favorite movies. Oh, man. Yeah, I just totally agree with Ebert. He's like, it's the movies. What do you want? Of course there's going to be, like, music playing in the background. You know? Of course. You know, it enhances the scene. That's why the director and the composer did it. Wow. Completely disagree. That's one of the greatest movies ever made.
The bloodstained ice cube in his mouth, and Perkins goes. In fact, Perkins does things with his mouth and eyes better than any other actor in the history of horror films, I think. The key to Psycho 3 is, of course, Norman Bates, Anthony Perkins, and in his first directing effort, Perkins shows that he knows Norman better than anyone else. He doesn't make the movie a freak show, but instead he develops some sympathy for Norman in a perverse way. Here's a man that's driven by demons that we can only imagine and uncertain of his connections with the real world. By this point, Hitchcock's original Psycho has become such an official classic that any movie named Psycho 3 is going to be routinely criticized in comparison with the Hitchcock film. All I have to say is, no matter what you call this movie, Anthony Perkins has made a very good, very scary horror film, and it seems like the one with the ice chest there, one that's very much in the Hitchcock spirit. I liked it.
That's a cute scene. I didn't get scared by the film. I was turned off by some of the violence, and I won't, of course, you're not saying it compares with the original. It just sort of laid there for me. I didn't think it was bad. I just didn't care to see it. It didn't interest me. We've talked before about how in some classic movies we don't want to know how the secrets are revealed. That didn't hold any interest for me. Obviously, the speech he makes in the restaurant there about the past guiding one's present and future is obvious. And so the film just sort of sat there, and I ended up just being bored.
Well, if the violence was too much for you, what did you think about the shower scene in the original Psycho? Was that too much for you, too?
No, it wasn't too much for me. That was one of the most shocking things and original things that I've ever seen before.
Well, there's a scene in this movie where somebody gets her neck cut that is just as shocking and in the same way. And I also felt in context, not like Friday the 13th, where they're just throwing it in by the shovelful, but within context and with the character. And there's another scene in this movie.
Yeah, but it's not a classic scene. That scene will not be recalled 20 years from now. 20 years from now.
Okay, 20 years from now, no movies this year are going to be recalled for their classic scenes, probably. Okay. We're talking about a scene that stands all by itself, so that's not a valid criticism. Another thing about the movie,
you just asked me if it was a good scene.
I asked you what you said about the violence, and you said the violence was okay in one but not in the other.
That's right.
Is, if it shocked you in one and didn't shock you in the other, then
no. Obviously, there can be violent films where you accept the violence. For example, Halloween is an extremely violent film that I thought was very well done. Psycho was another. This film was not. And there are tons of films that you've routinely disliked that have a lot of violence.
Yeah, but none of them have been quite this well directed, and I think the directing and acting is the whole thing when it comes to violence. There's another scene in this movie where Norman gets a note, presumably from his mother, saying, meet me in cabin number 12. And there's a long traveling shot as he walks the whole distance to that room, with the camera showing in his eyes and on his mouth and in his face such a play of emotions that it's absolutely fascinating. I think this is a much better movie than you're giving it credit for.
Well, there's no question that you think it's so, and I disagree. I don't think it's an X-rated film. I would have rated it an R without a qualm. But to the much more important issue of the quality of the movie, I felt it was too slow-moving, too studied, and too self-conscious until Lisa Bonet came on the screen. She's exciting. But by then, more than half the movie was over, and the conclusion of the film was not as shocking as it is intended to be. I didn't dislike Angel Heart, but overall, I thought it had a lot more style leading up to not much substance.
Well, of course, the movie is about style, so I didn't find that a problem at all. I also found the ending to be much more shocking than you did, because I did not, frankly, anticipate the turn that the story was going to take. And as I look back, I know there were all kinds of clues,
Yes.
but they fooled me. I also felt that from the beginning of the film, Mickey Rourke's character fascinated me. This really seedy, run-down private eye, the opposite of all the other 50s private eyes we've seen. Those guys that are always clean-shaven and have their little fedora and the starch in their shirt collars. This guy looked like, in some way, as you understand at the end the whole mystery of the film, you understand in a way why he looks so.
I was rooting for this film, Roger, and there are a lot of good things here in the picture. I felt it just was belaboring its point. All of the things that you're saying are true, except that they're elongated to such an extent. I wish if we had gotten down to Louisiana with Lisa Bonet faster, I think the film would have paid off faster.
Yeah, but I don't think you want television.
No,
let's hurry up and tell the story. Let's get it over. I want to know what happened. This movie is about, as I said before, it's about style, it's about atmosphere, it's about acting, it's about sets, it's about locations, it's about feeling.
There's another picture called "You're the Dragon," which came out of which a good picture. And
Mickey Rourke was in that.
I know, and I thought that did a better job in pacing of telling a story. Don't lay it on me that I want television. You know I don't want television any more than you did.
Well, in that case, I'm sorry you have to be on this show. Next movie is.
Yeah, I think Angel Heart's a really good movie. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe it takes a while to get there, but I don't know. I really like the movie. I'd agree with Ebert on that, but yeah, shout out to a YouTube channel, Horror Boost. The last video I did, she put these clips together, and but yeah, wow, yeah, Siskel, he had some bad takes there, but it's his opinion. So, but that's about it. See you next time.